Hey everyone, so this is going to be your Chapter 5 vocabulary video. So like I've done the past several weeks, I'm breaking up the videos. Mastery skills are its own thing, which if you haven't watched them, little quick plug, you have videos in here for the skills we've already talked about with mastery skills, so please take advantage of those because remember, you cannot pass this class unless you have all 10 skills done with an average of 80%. So quick plug on mastery skills because I know some of you have not done any of them yet, and that's concerning to me since we're almost halfway through the course. So if we scroll down here, we are in week 7, and this is dealing with chapter 5. You will already have your week 7 chapter 5 video over the content itself, the text and skill practice sheet, the PowerPoint, all of that. This is just your vocabulary. So under materials, if you want to have your vocabulary study guide out and ready. And then I will eventually, when we're done, talk about your quiz. So I'm going to pull up my study guide right here, and I'm going to start going over these words. Okay, so on the first side of this, we have the words trend down to consumer. These are all coming from the same selection. So if I get into our textbook, these are coming from, hopefully if you've already watched the text and skill practice sheet video, this comes from the reading that we already discussed. Would you like fries with that, or www.frieswiththat.com reading. So this is where this first set comes from. So as we talked about this reading and read through it in the previous video for this week, you would have seen these words already. But let's go ahead and talk about them. A trend is something that is popular. This is a word that is fairly new in the last decade, I would say. What's trending? So it means what's currently being talked about, what is popular, what is kind of on the headlines in a lot of places. Inclined means you are likely to. If you are inclined to go to school, you're likely to. If you're inclined to like something, you're likely to. So inclined means likely to. Accurate, I think we're probably familiar with, means correct. How accurate is something? How correct is it? Is it right? Reluctant means you're hesitant or unwilling. Maybe you're reluctant to get up in the morning. Maybe you're reluctant to go to work. Whatever the case is, you do it, but you're not really willing to do it. You're hesitant to do it. Aggregate or aggregate is when you combine several different elements together. So you might hear that when they say we're going to take all these numbers and we're going to aggregate them. We're going to combine them together and we're going to kind of look at them in one big holistic piece here. And then the last one from that particular reading is consumer. Sometimes people like to remember it like a customer, like someone who buys products. A consumer is one who consumes a product. They buy, they use, they take advantage of a certain service or product, a consumer. So those are the words from that fries.com reading. The next set, hybrid down to frequented, is going to be from our biographical profile, which in our text and skill practice sheet, we actually have questions on. So that's the first time that has happened. The easiest way that I've gotten to the biographical profile is, because it's on page 235, is I actually go into reading number 3 and I go to the actual article itself and then I scroll up. And it takes me too far, but there it is right here. So as I talked about in the text and skill practice, like the PowerPoint video, you may not be familiar with their names, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, but you probably use Google quite frequently, and these are the people who made that possible. So I think that was a really interesting biographical profile to read. So the next set of words come from this biographical profile. If you haven't already read it, hopefully you have because you've seen the previous video. But the words that come from this are hybrid is a combination of two or more things. You most likely hear that when it's talking about like a car, but a hybrid can be something like a hybrid of music. Maybe it's jazz and pop. It'd be an interesting mix. So hybrid is when you're taking two or more things and kind of mixing them together. An economist is someone who studies the economy. They're looking at the stock market, the supply and demand, the value of money, and those kind of things. Like that's their job. They are studying the economy. Invested, we usually think of someone who puts money into something, but if you invest, you might be putting your time into something, your effort, your energy, as well as possibly your money. And then frequented just means you to visit often. If you frequent something, you do it or visit often. It's kind of it's not just a once in a while type thing. It's every week or every month, or, so you're visiting or doing something often. So that's the front side of your study guide. So now we're going to go to the back of our study guide, and we're going to see that the words spotlight down to humiliating, right here, are going to come from another one of our readings from our text and scale practice sheet. So I'm going to go back here, and it is the CEO right here, this reading. The Baidu CEO, Robin Li, becomes China's richest man. So again, we already talked about this in our text and skill chapter video. So the reading itself should not be new, but now we're going to focus on the words. So in that reading, we saw the word spotlight, which in this case just means to focus. If you think of an actual physical spotlight, like shining a light on something, it's just what it sounds like. It's trying to direct your focus to something. So spotlight means to focus or really look at something. Assets are things like property that someone or a company owns that has value. And so if you go to the bank and they might say what are your assets? Do you own homes? Do you own property? Do you, so anything like that you can meet commitments on. So assets are usually property. That's usually the way in which they are viewed is property assets. Tycoon is a very wealthy and powerful business person. I mean, we could say that Jeff Bezos, he's stepping down soon, but the CEO of Amazon, he is a tycoon, a very powerful business person. Larry Page and Sergey Brin really are tycoons because even though they didn't start that way as business people, they now own one of the most powerful businesses, in the world. So tycoon is a wealthy and powerful business person. Algorithm, you might be familiar with this just from math class, a process or set of rules that you have to follow in order to reach an answer. And so it's step by step. You could be doing it by hand, or a computer will follow certain calculations or operations to get to a particular answer. And then humiliating is something I'm sure we've all felt at one point or another, is to kind of, your pride is hurt, you're embarrassed, maybe your dignity is a little dinged, so to be humiliated, a little embarrassed. All right, and then the last set of words, solitary down to capital, is going to come from our TED Talk. So in your textbook, we'll go over here, and again, your TED Talk right there, already talked about in your text and skill, the chapter video. Here we have the word solitary, means just alone. You might hear it like the card game solitaire, solitary confinement, alone, individual, by yourself. Resilient, to withstand and come back from difficult times. I would venture to say that we all are showing resilience right now with COVID and everything going on to come back from these difficult situations. It doesn't mean that it's not difficult or hard, but it means that we keep trying and we keep coming back and we work toward, reaching our goals, or just in some cases, just keeping hold of our sanity on a day-to-day basis. Analogy is a comparison, comparing two or more things. Sometimes they're alike, sometimes they're not, but the comparison tries to bring them together to try to compare those. A cavalcade is a procession of people. It could be, I've had people talk about the president, they have a cavalcade, a procession, they have cars that follow. A parade in itself is a cavalcade. Firefighters, when they go into a building, there's usually a line, a procession of them. And then capital in this case is really mostly referring to money, like money or assets being used. All right, so those are the vocabulary words for Chapter 5. Now, your Chapter 5 vocabulary quiz, I wanted to point a few things out. Odds are, if you're watching these videos, you're not the ones making these mistakes, but on Part A, it says it here, only one is correct. So you should only have the word correct written one time. I'm still having people write down the word correct 2 or 3 times. Also, keep the underlined word the same. You do not have to change that word. Okay, keep that word the same. You're not trying to find a substitute. You are changing the words around it. Adding the word not is not enough. So you need to do something a little bit different than that. Okay, so we know a solitary house stood on top of the cliff alongside many other homes. Leave the word solitary in there. Don't tell me a solitary house is not on top of the cliff. So rework the sentence as you need to make sure it's using it correctly. That's part A. Part B is short answer. Again, some of you are still skipping number 1 because it looks like it's done for you. It's not. It's just started to show you how to set up the others. So make sure you answer question 1. These are asking you questions about the words themselves. Pay attention to questions like this. Describe a chore you're reluctant to complete and why. So there's 2 in that one question. And then part C in this case is fill in the blank. When you are done, make sure you go back in, click into the area where you Dropbox it, and browse it and submit it. That is due Sunday the 7th, much like your text and skill practice sheet and your chapter 5 homework sheet. Those are all due Sunday. Your discussion post, as normal, is due by Wednesday for the week's attendance. All right, hope you all have a great week. Bye.